What's good, my dudes, and welcome back to the driveway for a car review presented today by Toyota, where this week the company has dropped off an SUV whose design dates back almost a decade, yet at the same time they've recently outfitted it with one of Toyota Racing Development's best off-road packages. So today we're going to get a look at and get to drive the 2019 Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro. Boys and girls, so let's get to it. You guys know what comes first, right? It is time to breathe some life into this baby. But before we do that, there are a couple things that I wanted to make mention of right off the bat, and I'm calling this segment Colors and Cash. The first of which, obvious by the name, is this truck's exterior color. It is specific just to the TRD Pro version, and it's known as Voodoo Blue. It is extremely bright, it has no metallic in it whatsoever, and it really does make this truck stand out a whole lot more than anything else in the 4Runner line. But then there's the flip side of that, which is the cash. If you want to buy one of Toyota's ultimate off-road products, you better be ready to dig deep into your pockets. The price tag on my particular test truck here, just over $48,000, which sounds like a lot of money, again, for a design that's been around for almost a decade already. And speaking of being around for a decade, check out the key to this truck. Now, keep in mind, I have a 2010 Toyota RAV4, and it uses the exact same key as a 2019 off-road SUV. Opening the door and accenting this Voodoo Blue, we have the solid black Softex leather interior. Just everything about this truck is just so big and so beefy. And I talked about the key. Speaking of the devil, here's the key to my RAV4 sitting right here, and they look absolutely identical. How funny is that? But standard Toyota key, standard place it should go. So put it in and you get the standard Toyota chime as well. Now, when you look at this 4Runner from the outside, it's pretty clear what the TRD Pro's goal is supposed to be. It is supposed to be built not only to be rugged, but also to make sure that it can take on the worst of what nature has to throw its way. Now, unfortunately, in the midst of many more modernized SUVs that are built for this same sort of thing, the 4Runner still seems a little bit lackluster when it comes to the features list. Now, that's not to say that the features list is short, because here on this TRD Pro, we have a completely unique front fascia here. The grille is much more open face, directing all the airflow into that massive old school V6 up front. However, on some terms, again, things are a little bit more on the downslope. We do have these smoked out projector beam headlights. They are automatic, but unfortunately, this near $50,000 truck only comes with halogen projector headlights, no auto high beam assist, no LED daytime running lights or anything like that, just incandescent high beams and daytime running lights hidden here on the inside. You do have a glimmer of hope, however. You do have some LED fog lights down here. These are standard on the TRD Pro. But if you want to talk about crazy and old school, take a look under here. This is a 1/4 inch thick TRD skid plate. Now again, this is standard and part of the many off-road goodies that Toyota includes with the TRD Pro version. Now this allows this truck with almost 10 inches of ground clearance to have an approach angle of about 33 degrees, and on the back side your departure angle is about 26 degrees. So already you can tell that this truck was built for the rough stuff. Now, of course, you can't have a big beefy looking truck like this without having something of a similar caliber to roll on as well. And down here are the TRD Pro's 17 by 7 inch matte black finished aluminum alloy wheels. Now, these are wrapped in some serious 265/70 series Nitto Terrain Grappler all-terrain tires. Now, aside from the wheel and tire package, underneath, Toyota has made sure that this suspension is as firm and beefed up as possible. Braking wise, you've got 13.3 inch discs in front, 12.3 inch discs in the rear, and underneath you have a TRD tuned Fox Racing suspension system with 2.5 inch bypass shocks all the way around. So not only will this thing perform on-road, but specifically off-road when it comes to the rougher things, Toyota's got you covered there at the same time. Now, of course, as you can imagine, with a truck like the TRD Pro, pretty much everything about it is big, and that includes the numbers on paper. Lengthwise, the TRD Pro is actually the biggest out of all of the 4Runner trims for 2019. It's over an inch longer than a 4Runner SR5 and just a hair longer than a competitive TRD off-road version. And again, that really has to do with its exterior design, with things like the exclusive front fascia, which sticks out just a little bit further than something that you would find on any of the other 4Runner trims. Now, in terms of features, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the most advanced features, especially when some of them aren't even functional. For example, the hood scoop here, it is completely closed off. It does not feed air into that massive engine up front. So even with all that stuff in the front, the only big air intake you have is the one here in the center of the grille. As you continue down, again, you don't really have a whole lot of anything advanced or anything in your face. You have body colored side view mirrors with the nice little air directors over the top. Those are built in specifically to deal with sort of these side drafts that you get off of other vehicles. Same thing with like this little nodule here, and there's also one on the tail light at the back. So when a vehicle passes you, you're not blown into the next lane by the wind drafts coming off of the other vehicle. You also have things such as the chunkier running boards down below. Again, those are standard here on the TRD Pro. Now, up top, we do have a standard size power tilting and sliding sunroof that is a factory feature here on the TRD Pro, and the same thing can be said with this big, beefy, and solid feeling upper roof rack here in the back. Now, again, just like a lot of other areas on this 4Runner, there's really nothing here at the back that just seems to jump out and grab my attention, again, aside from the bright exterior color that my tester is wearing. But here at the back, continuing the features list, we have partial LED taillights here. You have a massive piece of chrome that surrounds the incandescent turn signal here, but you do have LED brake lights, and I believe the reversing lights are LED as well. And then you have the reflector that finishes it off. You have the matte black TRD Pro badges, again, pretty much standard stuff, and they're also up here on the C-pillar as well, as you saw in the beginning. And then also you have pretty rudimentary things. You do have the government mandated backup camera here with a large 4Runner logo going across the back. And again, being a little more old school, we have nothing like rear park assist or anything like that. Again, just the backup camera to finish everything off. Now, even though I just said there's really nothing at first glance that grabs my attention about this 4Runner specifically, there is still one party piece that most 4Runner owners have known about for a good few years at this point. Now, the first thing to talk about is the cargo area back here, because it is quite vast. So you open up the rear hatch here, and you're looking at about 48 cubic feet of space total behind the second row of seats. Now, in 4Runner cases with the third row of seats as an option, of course, you're going to lose a good bit of the cargo space. But in this particular case, like I said, about 48 cubic feet of space to start, hence the reason why I have so much crap back here already. But if you fold down the 40, 20, 40 split fold seats in the second row, that suddenly extends to almost 90 cubic feet of space. So still, a vast SUV means you get vast amounts of cargo space. But the cargo space isn't the best thing about this 4Runner. Oh no, let me just close this tailgate for a second. Now, let's suppose you don't want to go through the hassle of just ripping open the tailgate and loading all your stuff in the back. Let's say you're wanting to do things in a more unique fashion. You simply take the standard Toyota key, you put it in the keyhole here in the back, you hold it in the unlock position for a second or two, and suddenly your whole back window just rolls right down into the lower part of the tailgate. Don't like it down? Just turn it to the lock position. and suddenly your whole back window rolls right up.
Now, stepping into this 4Runner's interior, there are two things that stick out to me right off the bat. The first of which is that even though this truck is definitely not as big as something like a Highlander, it's certainly not as big as something like a Sequoia, it still does feel quite cavernous in here. I have plentiful amounts of room, and actually sitting here in the driver's seat, even with it in almost its lowest setting, I feel like I'm actually sitting quite high up, and that does not include the fact that we're sitting almost 10 inches off the ground from the rocker panels all the way to the ground. But the second thing, and this is the more primary one, especially with a lot of journalists that I've been talking to these days, it is extremely basic in here. But as I mentioned before, this truck is not built as a luxury vehicle. Even though its price tag is comparative to something like a luxury truck, it's far from it. So you don't have the Toyota safety sense systems, you don't have a 1,000,000-inch screen dominating half of the dash, and you certainly don't have a jillion buttons lacing every single surface inside. Instead, what you have is just a 4-spoke multifunction steering wheel directly here in front of the driver. It's big, it's thick, it's chunky, it has the huge grip extensions up here in the upper corners with the perforated sections on either side, and all just basic controls across the top. You have an arrow pad that can be used for things either like Bluetooth media streaming, or even to alter parts of the display up here in the gauge cluster. But that button is actually located right here, the one labeled DISP. That is your main one to control the gauge cluster display up here in the middle. On the left, continuing on, you have other buttons such as the back feature, you have the button to mute the radio, as well as your volume control. And over here on the right, aside from that one button I just mentioned, you have your voice recognition, hands-free Bluetooth control, and in a nod to the old school again, you have a little stalk here that controls your cruise control functions as well, that sticks out of the lower right-hand corner of the steering column itself. Now, moving on from that, you do have a tilting and telescoping function. The lever is located just down underneath the steering wheel here. And then just to the left of the column, you don't really have much. You have your power mirror controls. The rest of your controls are way up here on the door. All 4 automatic windows, your locks, your window locks as well. And I'm loving the position of those, by the way. But you also have things such as your heated windshield wipers, your instrumentation dimming, and then you actually have a button that controls the 400-watt sort of household plug that is located in the trunk. It's on the right hand side of the trunk over by the subwoofer, and you can actually turn it on. You can turn it on to either 400 watts, you can turn it on to a 120 volt alternating current outlet, or you can just simply have it at 100 watts for things that don't require so much power. Now, if you want to talk about a case of being basic but not excessive, this TRD Pro 4Runner not only has one of the smallest infotainment screens that I've seen in a vehicle not only of this caliber but also of this price tag, but it also houses one of Toyota's newer Entune app suite systems. So as far as the applications are concerned, you have things like your navigation, which the graphics are pretty basic and somewhat subpar, especially in a vehicle of this price range. If you flick on over to the rest of the app suite, you have things such as your audio, your phone, your text messages, your general vehicle setup, your active traffic and weather updates, as well as your maintenance scheduling as well. Flick on over to the home tab here. You have things such as preset contacts when you synchronize your phone with the Entune system, or specifically the Bluetooth system. You have your audio functions and a split screen function with navigation in it as well. Now, I talked about this system not being excessive, but there is one thing in here that was definitely surprising and more than enough for a truck like this, and that is this vehicle's 15-speaker JBL Green Edge audio system. Now, if you want to talk about standing out, aside from the sub-sized screen up here at the top of the dash, take a look at this 4Runner's climate control system. So simplistic, it might as well belong in an economy car, because you have one knob over here for your fan speed, one for your climate zones in the middle, and one for your temperature on the right, with only 3 little buttons here in the middle. And they're not even little. I mean, look at the size of this. You have your AC recycling over here on the left. You have the AC itself here in the middle, so just adding Freon to the system itself. And then you have your heated rear defroster and heated exterior mirrors over here on the far right, and that is it. No automatic functions, no climate display up here on the screen, none of that. But down below that, you do have some pretty sizable little nooks and crannies and cubby holders, and you might as well be able to stuff just about anything in here. Here on the upper one, you could stuff something like maybe a wallet or maybe a smaller cell phone, if they even still have those these days. In the lower one, you have just enough space for something like a decent sized smartphone, as you can see. And then hidden just below that, you have the first of at least a couple of cup holders. I have a 16.9 fluid ounce bottle, and as you can see, it fits in there no problem. And I've even been able to fit a extra large Polar Pop from the local Circle K in here as well, and that fit with no problems and no hindrances here as well. Over next to the upper cubby, you do have a USB and auxiliary input, as well as one 12-volt 120-watt outlet located here behind this little cover. If you continue on from there, you have the controls for the part-time four-wheel drive system. Now, just to be clear, I've only tried this system while it was stationary, going through a little bit of deep mud to actually go get some scenic photos of this truck, and it worked absolutely beautifully. And I've not tried it on the fly, but to those who have, I'm pretty sure they know that it works just beautifully. I've had a lot of people complain to me that I don't know very much about four-wheel drive systems, and to be fair, I really don't know too much about this one. I do know, however, it coincides with your multi-terrain select and your crawl control hidden up here on the roof. So over here on the left is your crawl control. You can set the different speed at which it will allow the vehicle to crawl, as it says. And then you have your multi-terrain select up here, which again, once you set it to specific ones, the vehicle will instruct you through the screen up here which of the four-wheel drive modes you will need to be in, and that's about the most simplistic way I can describe it. Surrounding everything down here, you have this kind of faux carbon fiber-like trim, and it does add a nice touch to the interior. But then you get to this monster. This is the TRD shift knob that is standard here, not only for this 5-speed automatic transmission, talk about dating back just a bit, but this one is also standard here for the TRD Pro. So you have a bit of faux leather on the top, and then here on the front with the TRD logo on top and some red stitching for an accent. And again, for the 5-speed auto, it goes through the gates just like any other shifter. You have park, reverse, neutral, drive. You have the manual mode here, which push forward to go up a gear, pull down to go down a gear. You have the government mandated backup camera hidden up here in the screen itself. And always, like most Toyota products, you have automatic door locks as well. So put it in park, the doors come open. Anytime you put it in any other gear, the doors will automatically lock. As you continue on a little further, you have another little cubby. As you can see, my phone is sitting here nice and comfortable as well. And then the secondary cup holder, which is a little bit larger and again fits something like this little bottle, as well as your extra large Polar Pop in there, no problem whatsoever. A couple more controls that are at least noteworthy down here. You have your heated front seats here, which I'm actually more a fan of these than I am in most other vehicles that I've tested, because it has the little, almost like a tuning knob. You can set exactly where you want your heated seat to be, instead of the preset 2 or 3 stage heated seats that you find in a lot of other vehicles, especially ones in this price range. And last but not least, remember that little party piece with that sliding rear window that I talked about earlier? Well, here is the front switch for the driver to be able to control that same feature. It's an automatic one-touch window, just like all the other windows in this vehicle. You push it down, that rolls it down, pull it up, or pull it towards you, and that rolls the window up. And again, it is automatic one touch. Now, as you move up to the roof, aside from the controls that I was showing you guys earlier, which include the crawl control and the multi-terrain select, there are a couple of other things up here on the roof that are more noteworthy. You have things like your lighting controls, your HomeLink garage door system here, but you also have things such as your differential locker and your traction control as well. This truck, to be specific, has a Torsen center differential, and again, the diff locker is included as standard. And you also have controls for the standard size, at least, power tilting and sliding sunroof up here on the top. And the controls are over here on the far right, so you can tilt it using the button over here on the far right, or just one pull of the slide trigger and So knowing the size of this 4Runner in general, it's no surprise that when you sit in the back here, not only do I have loads of headroom thanks to an indented headliner up here on the top, but just look at where my legs are sitting. I'm 6'1", so I'm not small by any means, and I have this seat exactly where I would be driving it if I were to be the driver of this vehicle. And as you can see, the back of the seat is nice and curved. I've got mesh mat pockets here in the back of both of these seats, and I just have oodles and oodles of room. I mean, I could sit back here and sleep in this thing if I really wanted to, because there's just so much room back here. All right, so now that you've seen all the macho off-roady bits that this TRD Pro has to offer, now comes the fun part. But unfortunately, there is a little bit of a caveat to our test drive today. We won't be able to take this thing off-road. And I know so many of you guys were just itching for me to take this thing off into the hills and trails and go slinging mud everywhere and get this thing as dirty as possible. But unfortunately, in most cases with press cars like this, even as cool as this 4Runner is, you have to get explicit permission from the company in order to take this vehicle anywhere but on the road. So even though we're not going to be able to do the off-road part today, I want to see exactly how this off-road monster behaves when you just drive it like an everyday vehicle. So, in usual cases, seatbelt on, engine start. Alrighty, boys and girls, so we are on the road in the TRD Pro 4Runner. And first off, there is no getting away from the fact that out on the road like this truck feels absolutely huge. And I mean, for an everyday driver like me, certain things like staying in your lane can be a little bit complicated, being the fact that not only this truck is as massive as it is, but you are sitting so high up in the air already. Now, when you talk about sitting up in the air, that brings me to my first point, which is exactly how comfortable this truck actually is out on the road. Sure, you have some road noise intrusion from things like the huge all-terrain tires, and again, this truck being as large as it is, but at the same time, I find it to be quite composed on the road, and it really boils down, to me at least, with the Fox Racing suspension that has been put underneath this truck. So as it's pretty clear by not only the way this truck looks, but also just Toyota's name for it in general, this truck is not built to go just on everyday surface streets. It is built to tackle the most rough and rugged things possible. And when you don't want to talk about rugged, you want to talk about things that are durable. And if you want to talk about durable, you have to talk about the powertrain that Toyota has stuffed underneath this aging SUV. Up under the hood, we have a 4-liter dual overhead cam aluminum V6, basically an engine that dates back to the mid-2000s, and the same goes for this transmission, the old 5-speed electronically controlled transmission with intelligence. Now, the intelligent part, I can only assume, is this little manual mode here, because to be honest, it doesn't feel very intelligent putting such an old powertrain in a 2019 SUV. But again, you have to build stuff that's going to last over time, and Toyotas have been known for that for years. I should know, I have one myself. When it comes to just driving this thing in everyday conditions, like I said, it's surprisingly docile for a over 2-ton SUV. Sure, there's a lot of body roll, and again, the road noise can be a bit intrusive, but when you're just kind of perusing the town, number one, don't expect good gas mileage. Even with this thing's eco mode active, which I would hardly call it that, I've averaged an even 15 miles per gallon over the entire week of our 400 miles of testing that we've put on this truck. So really, in the end of it all, the question comes down, as always, would one buy one? Well, if I were in the market for a truck that I wanted to go slinging mud everywhere and tearing up the trails and the mountains and maybe hitting the beach at the same time and just go do some four-wheeling everywhere, then absolutely, I would say that while it costs almost 50 grand, and yes, the design is quite old, this thing can keep up with just about anything that's out there on the trail. And where most lifted trucks would be crying and running for home, this thing could absolutely tackle pretty much anything else. And those aren't my words, those are actually the words that have come from you guys that have commented on either like my Facebook post, my Instagram post, or anything like that that have talked about this truck. And lastly, one of the things that I guess is a bit of a send-off is this is one of the last body over frame built SUVs, where most
crossovers and sport utilities have gone to more unibody constructions, I like the fact that this truck is still an old school body over frame. Well guys, I hope you've enjoyed my review on the 2019 Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro, and if you guys have, please do give this video a thumbs up, and also be sure to click that subscribe button down below for many more videos like this and more to come in the future. But in the end, a huge thanks goes out once again to the folks at Gulf States Toyota and Toyota USA for providing us this monster off-road SUV to have fun in for an entire week. But in the end, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I will see y'all next time. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.